Oh, stop. Hello, and welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host today, Mayor Tim Elinski, and with me we have Superintendent Steve King and Mr. Al Filardo, who is the founder of Verde Valley Leadership and a community advocate. So today I was hoping we could have a conversation around education in general here in the Verde Valley. And I guess we could start with you, Superintendent King, and talk about what the current state of education is here in the Verde Valley, and we'll talk about specifically early childhood daycare, K through 8, high school, post-secondary, and if you could maybe even grade it. If you give us a grade on education, and we'll talk about what that means and ways that we can improve and what things we do now that we do really well.
Yeah. Huge question, but thank you, Mayor, for having me on here, and Al as well. It's always good to see Al. The current state of education, well, here in Cottonwood, in the last year or so, we've seen some pretty significant changes in how our schools are structured. So last year, Cottonwood Oak Creek School District had 5 schools in its district. This year we have 4 schools, and we went down from we have Mountain View Prep, which is a K-8 school. We have Oak Creek School, which is a pre-K through 8 school, and I always add that pre-K in there because early childhood education is very important. And then we took 3 of our in-town schools and turned them into 2 K-8 schools because the K-8 model is supportive of the direction we're going as a district, which is create safe, supportive, caring, functional, and responsive schools to our families and communities. We had children that were, or families that had children in 4 different schools. If you think about it, they went from DDB to CES to CMS and now eventually to Mingus. And it's tough, scheduling wise and learning all the ropes and the names and all that stuff. And so we wanted to create those schools where kids can stay for a longer period of time so we can establish those relationships with families and children. And then we took CES, the old Cottonwood Elementary School campus, and that's been an expansion into our early childhood programs. So our early childhood education programs have more than doubled in size at Bright Bears, which has been huge. Early childhood education shows research tells us that quality early childhood education has the biggest impact on later learning in these kids' lives. So we really wanted to afford more opportunities for early childhood education for our kids. And then we also added some special education programs, including the Menta program. And the Menta program we just brought in this year to respond to a growing need of high-need special education children, whether they're children with autism or children with behavioral needs, that we can get them ready to be reintegrated back in the regular classroom. So there's been a lot of changes. In the last 6 months, it's been very challenging, but I will say that our staff is unbelievable. From the leadership team to the teachers to the paraprofessionals to the cafeteria and to our bus crew, they've been absolutely incredible in making everything work the way it should. And our facilities have been outstanding as well.
Good. So it sounds like a lot of improvements then over the last few years.
We're getting there. I don't know, but we're not there yet. We still have a lot of work yet to do. But we're forming the basis for real lasting and sustainable change and making good things.
Good. Yeah. Al, you want to speak a little bit about high school and post-secondary?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. You're talking about the portion of education system that we have that's near and dear to my heart. And to be quite honest, I'm a bit concerned. So, Steve is in the Verde Valley and locally in Cottonwood and does a great job in the area. I bring in the global perspective and the national perspective. In fact, I looked at the 3 high schools that we have. Mingus, when you look at the World News Report rankings, Mingus is not ranked, Camp Verde is not ranked, Sedona is ranked 1,348 slot. And what's happening is our young people are not doing so well when it comes to proficiency in English and math. ACT, the American College Test, just came up with the 2018 summary of the result of the testing. The math readiness of this country, considering the 1.9 million high school grads who took the ACT, has dropped to a 14-year low. Not just in math, but also in reading, in English, in just about every category. And that cannot continue. That combined with the poverty rate in Cottonwood, Camp Verde, and the state poverty rate is around 18%. Cottonwood, I think, is what, 39 or something.
Poverty in Cottonwood specific is 24%.
24%. And that combined does not help us. And remember, the ACT summary are young people that are motivated to learn and ready to go to college. So if you're looking at them and the result is saying that we've declined in the last 14 years, it's not very good. Especially in engineering, which is a major economic driver, and when you go to engineering, you need math. So we really need to take it up a notch.
Do you have any ideas on what we could do to improve here in the Verde Valley?
Absolutely. I think I believe for the longest time that we mistreat our educators because of lack of resources. Our salaries, I don't know. The 5 lowest paying state is Oklahoma, Mississippi, South Dakota, North Carolina, and West Virginia, right? And West Virginia's average pay per year per teacher is $45,000. Arizona is at about 48, and it just jumped up from 47. We simply need to treat our teachers much better. I mean, if you look at the impact in my life, where I am now, I can attribute to a few teachers that influenced me.
Sure.
I mean, the turnover rate in our teachers is incredibly high. Not just incredibly high, but by the end of 2018, 24% of our teachers in Arizona are due to retire. So this shortage is not going to go away.
Right.
And they are the key. You know, you can talk about everything else. We have third world country that have mud floors, but have wonderful teachers that are beating us in the rankings.
Right.
So we need to help our teachers. I mean, they can talk. I mean, even the increases that Governor Ducey put in place is not enough. You know, the average in the United States for teachers is about $58,000. If I had the power, I would have a minimum of salary that matches the national average, which is $58,000.
Sure.
I mean, if you look at Southern Arizona, some of those folks are at $38,000. I mean, come on.
Right.
These are our future. So, and it's showing. I mean, with all the talk about STEM, it's focus on STEM didn't help us. If you look at the ACT scores.
Got it. Okay. Well, you kind of touched on what my next question was. So I'll ask Superintendent King then. What barriers exist to good qualified teacher attraction and retention?
Yeah, that's a great question, and everything Al is saying is true. Recent years, we've seen a huge exodus of professionals from the profession, either through retirement or young people going into the profession saying, you know, this is not really me. It's not the same environment teaching as it was 10, 15 years ago. A lot of the children that are coming to us right now are facing challenges that I could not even conceive of as I was growing up. And they bring those things to school with them, and those are barriers to learning. One of the things that I'm very hopeful for is this past year, VACT, Bob Weir's organization, working in collaboration with Mingus High School, Camp Verde High School, and Sedona Red Rock High School, as well as the districts within those, the elementary school districts such as ours, have implemented what they call ed professions, and that's training young teachers to be teachers while they're still in high school so they can exposure to the classroom, and then hopefully put them on a track to go into college and to keep teaching. Growing our own, so to speak, I think is really the key. One of the challenges that we're seeing with teacher retention is affordable housing. It's Cottonwood being an increasingly expensive place to live. You look what's happened to Sedona. You know, the housing prices there. If you're working there, more than likely you're not living there. And we're starting to see that come this direction. And so, what kind of other ideas do we have creatively? Maybe looking at teacherages, where they have a place where they can live at as they get on their feet when they move here from somewhere else, if we're not growing their own. But also, I think that the biggest thing is the culture, creating that culture where learning and teaching are both valued, and that we recognize that there's no more important thing that we can do for our community and our children than education and the schools they're in. And that's a process, because if you look around, you know, everything Al is saying as far as how much value do we place on education. There was a famous quote that says, you can talk to me all you want to about what you value, but show me your budgets and I'll tell you what you value.
Right. Right.
And I think that's crucial. And it's not just all about money, certainly. We don't start with, okay, how much money do we have and how do we want to spend it or complain? Our two favorite words in Cottonwood Oak Creek School District are, so what? We know we have these challenges, but what are we going to do about it? What are those things that we have control over? And unfortunately, the budgets are not something we have a great deal of control over. Much of our budgets are set by mandates. As far as most teacher salaries are a huge component of what our budgets are. But it's how you use those and the people you can attract and bring in who really get what we're trying to do in Cottonwood Oak Creek. Right. And that's to build that positive, supportive, safe, caring culture with our kids. And I think that's where we're going to see the results on what we're doing. Right. And to go about a little bit, and Al and I probably have a few disagreements, but on some things. But to me, test scores are very limited in what they can actually reflect on what's happening out there with our kids. They're not outcomes. And as we work with our partner districts, Mingus and Yavapai College, to create those opportunities for the kids as they come out of elementary school from 8th grade up into high school and then off to post-secondary, that's where the real outcomes are going to happen. What are they going to be doing for their post-secondary education? Because we know that 99% of the jobs, and that's not an exaggeration, but the new jobs being created, 99% of them require at least some post-secondary education, whether it's a certification, an associate's degree, bachelor's degree, or master's degree. So getting these kids ready, and not just academically, although that's very important, but also where they have that vision for themselves. And that's the real challenge, is helping these kids build a vision and a dream for themselves that sees themselves doing things that they may not have even thought of before, building that hope with kids. And that's what we're all about.
Good. Yeah. Okay. I have to cut you off here for a real quick break. When we get back, I want to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we have with our youth leaving the area. Great. So join us here in 1 minute. Thanks.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host today, Mayor Tim Elinski. With me we have Al Filardo, who is the founder of Verde Valley Leadership and now a strong community advocate for us. And we have Superintendent Steve King for the Cottonwood Oak Creek School District.
Thank you, Mayor.
We're talking about education in general in the Verde Valley. And before we left, I said I wanted to speak a little bit about, before we left on break, about some of the trends in our youth and how the numbers are looking in enrollment and then as kids graduate high school. Where are they heading? So if we could maybe start with you, Steve.
That's a great question, Mayor. A lot of the things we don't know. So as the kids leave us, most often they go up to Mingus and they get prepared for whatever comes next, whether it's work, career, college, whatever it is. And looking at where they're going, we do see a lot of our youth leave. The ones that are off to college, oftentimes they don't return. They find other places to do or other places to go and other things to do. And that's a huge challenge because if we look at our community and the health of our community overall, that's a brain drain. And we'd like to see them return and be giving members of our little community here. But it goes hand in hand with economic development at the same time as the affordable housing. You know, young people coming right out of college, oftentimes they'll start an entry level, whatever it is. And it's tough to find a place to stay. A realtor recently told me, we were asking him about apartments for teachers. He said that the average time an apartment is on the market in Cottonwood is less than a day.
Wow.
And so, you know, supply and demand and Adam Smith capitalist economics, it tells you that those prices are going to be driving up. You also see the Airbnbs coming into town and things like that and driving those real estate prices up. So to find the jobs that support even raising a family in this community is tough. So it's a multifaceted approach to the whole thing. If we can get the economic drivers going at the same time as the educational drivers, That's what I think the key is going to be. And I don't pretend to know the answers to those questions, but as we were talking before, I think it's very important that we as a community, the economic side, the town government side, the education side, the community college side, all look at this. And I think James Perry has done some excellent work in looking at what the makeup of the community is and the direction we're going, the current realities that we're facing.
Right.
But I'm very hopeful that together we can find at least some answers to the problems that we face.
Yeah. Okay. And Mr. Filardo, from your perspective?
Yeah, we not just from the research that has been published, but my experience with my own son when he was graduating out of Red Rock High School. I asked him if he was going to stay here to attend a community college first, because I was motivated to ask that because it's more affordable, and he said, "There's nothing to do here, Dad." And that's a short-term look by the kid at the time, and I knew that. But the jobs, we don't have enough. On one hand, people can say we have economic diversity. We have enough to do. But the economic diversity that we have compared to a place like Phoenix, for example, is different. If you look at the job growth in certain areas, for example, the highest job growth we're experiencing is in healthcare services, okay? Now, the average salary for healthcare services in Verde Valley is $51,800. The average in Arizona is $65,000. So even if we train the young people, and Yavapai College, we have four great institutions in this area, U of A, ASU, NAU, and we have a wonderful college, right? Even if we had Yavapai College rated at 10 right now, 1 being poor and 10 being the best, our kids would probably still leave. And as Steve was saying, we're going to have to look at this with a holistic approach. And somehow we're going to have to get it started just like the way we started Old Town. Somebody came along and said, I'm going to invest, right? So at some point, we need to help Yavapai College invest, even though students are not visible yet, because we need to develop CTE, for example. They have a good start. They're looking at the building now on the Clarkdale campus that they're going to refurbish for CTE. But we need more, because the wages are going to pull our young people out of here, okay? And the opportunities are going to pull our young people out of here. So it's going to take a whole lot, and with the housing issue, it's going to be hard to attract teachers here, right? And one idea I have is, again, if I had the power, is if you look at Australia, they bring in electricians from other countries. They bring in accountants. If you look at the Middle East, they do the same thing. We have a shortage in teachers. If we can't find a way to increase their salaries, you can get people from the Philippines, for example, where the average salary is $9,000 a year. They have degrees up to here. They speak English. Bring them in maybe as an interim until we can find a way to boost our own people's salary. Because we got to get over the shortage, because with this shortage, his job is going to get more and more difficult as far as raising the grades that we need.
Right.
Our students deserve it, you know, and our poverty rate. I worked in Chandler because I was an executive, and part of our corporate social responsibility is to work in the community. I work with the 3 high schools in Chandler with challenged kids, challenge being poor. And it's incredible what poverty does to someone trying to finish off high school. They go home to parents that hardly finished high school, can't help them in the homework. So we have all these combination of things that as a community we all need to pitch in. That's why I speak up about education, because he is doing a fabulous job. James Perry and Yavapai College is beginning to churn. We have a new president that the first thing she spoke about was about poverty in community colleges. So we have a lot of work to do, but like Steve, I'm very hopeful, because I'm beginning to feel all these folks that care, like you, like him, and the teachers. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, we have to take another quick break. When we get back, I want to talk a little bit more about poverty. I think it's one of it was definitely a theme during our strategic planning retreat, and I think it's something important in our community we need to face. So we'll take a quick 1-minute break and come back and speak some more. Thanks.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Mayor Tim Elinski. With me is Superintendent Steve King from Cottonwood Oak Creek, and Al Filardo, who is the founder of Verde Valley Leadership and community advocate. So before we took our break, we were getting into poverty as sort of an impediment to many things in our community. I wanted to speak a little bit more about that. Maybe we can start with you, Steve. I know you see a lot of this with the folks coming into your district. How do you feel that affects their ability to learn and be successful?
Well, I think it affects a lot of things. And the first thing I think you need to understand is that it doesn't look like it used to. Mm-hmm. Often as when you think of poverty, the depression or from what you see in Appalachia, it's not like that. It's a little bit more insidious. And what you see more than anything is it reduces the vision. I was compared to horse blinders. A lot of times the children that are coming to us, they're very limited in their worldview, or at least their own possibilities in that world and their place in that world. And as educators, it's incumbent upon us, our first priority is to help those students to take those blinders off. And so they come to us with that. A lot of the situations too that we're seeing with our kids that are growing, and we've really been guided in this to a large degree as a district as far as what we call adverse childhood experiences, mm-hmm. or ACEs. And ACEs are situations that happen in kids' lives, especially when they're very young, that cause trauma. And the effect of those, and it can be anything from neglect to abuse to household substance abuse to an incarcerated parent to a wide variety of things like that. But if children are subjected to those toxic stressors, it reduces their brain's capacity to learn in many ways. And oftentimes we're seeing that with a lot of the children that are coming in. And that's the number one reason we're moving the direction we are doing, is creating these schools that are, the move to the K-8s, mm-hmm. was to create those relationships. And we really believe that relationships are the key to learning later on. Mm-hmm. And it's not to diminish academics at all, but a lot of times if a kid goes home to a situation that's less than ideal, they may be having to worry about what couch they're sleeping on, or where their next meal's coming from. And they have to focus on all these different things just for survival. And then we put them into a classroom. We say, okay, sit down, shut up, and do your work. Mm-hmm. Well, their brains go from out here to this focus, and they don't necessarily have the skills to go in that direction. So that's really the impact that we're seeing in the classroom anyway, of children that are having a difficult time focusing. Yet on top of that, the social media, all those other stressors and conditions mm-hmm. that we're seeing in children's lives in the last 20 years. And it's creating a situation where we have to rethink, as schools, what are we doing and how we're doing it. Right. And you look at people talk about the schools of the 21st century, and my friend Dan Brown, who was the superintendent of Camp Verde, used to talk, we don't even know what kind of jobs are going to be available 15 years from now. They don't even exist. They're not in anyone's radar at all, what these jobs are going to be. So if we're focused just on one job, mm-hmm. are we really doing that service to the child? Or if we're focused on those skills necessary to learn and really instill or help those children develop that love of learning, because it's constantly changing. Mm-hmm. And if you're not keeping up, you're going to be left behind. Mm-hmm. As I said before, post-secondary education is the absolute key. And it's not just about college degrees, but certifications and technical trades. Mm-hmm. That's where a lot of this is really moving in that direction. And how do we provide that? And if we do build those programs, like what Al says, through the high school or through the community college, mm-hmm. we want kids to hit that ground running in high school and say, yes, this is what I want to do. And once they build that vision for themselves, there's no stopping them. You know, as I tell the kids around here, you're no dumber than kids anywhere else. You're capable of doing these things. But they got to see it. And they have to have the ability to dream. And our responsibility, conversely, is if they're dreaming big, we have to be able to provide in a big way later on for them. And that's where we're at.
Got it.
Yeah.
Al, what are your thoughts on the poverty in the area and how that affects our ability to move forward?
My gosh, as far as the students are concerned, I know from experience that when you're hungry, you just can't concentrate. And when I was working here in the local church, where we have a youth group consisting of, you know, challenge kids, some of them, when they'd come in, like at about 5 o'clock, the first meal they're eating for the day is what the church provide for them. And some of them are embarrassed to say something, and some of them go home to an empty home, you know. So not only some of them are short on getting help at home, but I mean, there's nothing like hunger to prevent you from learning, at least from experience. So we need more advocates. We need more of a way to let the students open up about everything that's influencing their learning, that's happening outside of the schoolhouse. I worked with a group, some high school, and I asked the teachers, what is this place? What is this place? And one teacher said, a place that is a home that builds character, right? And we have a few students that finds his schools and the high schools as the home,
right? Because
the rest, the other part of their lives don't have that support system. And you know what can happen when kids are in that position? Sometimes they find a way to get involved in other things that's not necessarily beneficial to their future.
Sure.
So I cannot even believe that this country has any poverty. That's where I'm coming from, you know, let alone a place like this would have anybody that's poor, but that's the way it is, right? On one hand, we're extremely rich, on the other hand, we're poor.
Sure. Well, Cottonwood is a community, as you know, that has a lot of folks that move here from elsewhere, and they've had their career elsewhere, they've raised their families elsewhere, and they move here to retire. And what would you say to someone like that? How would you express to them why should they care about education in Verde Valley?
They should care because we either pay now or pay later, right? Everybody I run into ever since I got into this education kick is, please, get your tax credit. Give your school, whichever one you prefer. Ours is Clarkdale.
And it very well could be Cottonwood Oak Creek. People prefer that too.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So if you take the number of manufacturing workers in the car industry in the United States combined, right? We have as many people working in our correctional institution. That's staggering. And what happens is, if you look at the population that are incarcerated, most of them got in trouble, never finished high school, and it just doesn't look good. Right. Now, we have a lot of good kids. If you compete with our kids in the world, and you take our top 5 or 10% of our kids, we kick anybody's rear end. It's the poor kids that are subjected to poverty and a way of life that's not conducive to learning. That's where we get in trouble, right? Because education and learning is a culture. And nothing much has changed from the ACT result. African American and Hispanics are lagging in all the skills and also leading in the poverty. White folks and Asian Americans, partly like me, are number one when it comes to studying. It is because of culture. From the time they can walk, learning is important. Now, when I was working down in Chandler, working with the 3 high schools, one of the things we did, to the point that Steve was making earlier, is we connected retired executives to high school kids that are in trouble. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how it worked, because they got an experience of what is in front of them, because we can't just keep telling them, education is good for you, education is good for you. Mm-hmm. We have to be able to show them a picture, what they can look forward to in the future.
Right. And Superintendent King, I think you have a program like that, don't you?
We've been working on it for a number of years, and Al's points are all very well taken. And you look at the dynamics of the community here, and there are a lot of retirees moving here from other places, and oftentimes they're professionals, mm-hmm. attorneys, engineers, accountants, whatever it is that they're, nurses, doctors, and so on. And connecting them with our community, mm-hmm. and more specifically our schools, I think would be a huge benefit for everyone involved. And if you look at programs such as Big Brothers Big Sisters, or even our volunteer programs within our schools, and I know there's a little bit of a trepidation sometimes with some people maybe, but we do know that there is nothing more important than meaningful, appropriate adult relationships in changing the trajectory of children's lives. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we can't do it all. No one person can do it all. You know, they say waiting for Superman to show up and change everything. It doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. It's about changing that culture, mm-hmm. and bringing people in who care, people of goodwill, who say, you know what, I want to make a difference in the community somehow. And Al is absolutely right. Pay now or pay me later. It's we spend $30,000 a year to incarcerate someone, and we spend about $8,000 to educate them. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of an imbalance there. And I drank this. People say I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm a firm believer in the power of schools and education to change not just individual lives of kids, but actually communities, mm-hmm. for the better. And a well-educated community, you have lower crime, you have more tax, you've got all those good things that happen when you have higher educational attainment. But Al is absolutely right when he talks about culture, and growing that culture within our own schools and our own community. Say, you know what, what's more important than kids? Mm-hmm. You know, what do you take with you? You know, whenever you go somewhere, you know, whenever you pass on to whatever it is, the only remainder are children, mm-hmm. that are left behind. And what are we doing for them? Mm-hmm. And then someone much wiser than I said, you know, you can judge a community by how it values its least or most vulnerable. Right. And I think our children are our most vulnerable right now. And to invest in them would be life-changing, mm-hmm. not just for them, but for the volunteers as well. And so we welcome them to come into our schools, or just, if you don't want to do that, just come and talk to me. I'd love to sit down and chat with you, and take you around and maybe show you a couple kindergartner classes, and maybe they even sing to you, and you might just say, hey, that might be something I might like to do, at least read a book to a kid. Right. Everybody can do that. Right. Yeah.
Well, very good. I get the feeling we could be here for several hours talking about this. This is hopefully part of an ongoing conversation that I hope the city gets, you know, stronger presence with both of you to help create stronger partnerships and really tackle some of these bigger issues that we face. So.
And Mary, you've always been right there, and the questions that you are always asking about education are spot on, and I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we really have to continue this. We have a lot of changes in management. You have a new town manager, a city manager. Clarkdale's going to have a new town manager. I mean, there's a whole lot of changes. Yavapai College's new president. I'm very impressed with what I'm hearing about her so far, and from her via media. So I'm extremely hopeful, extremely hopeful.
Yep, I am too. Yeah. Thanks to you both for taking time out of your day. And that's going to wrap up this Inside Cottonwood. So
thank you.
Again, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next month.